Hi, this is Aaron Wilson. We're talking about Nick Caley's offense and how he's putting his stamp on overhauling a unit that really became stagnant last year under Bobby Slowick, leading to his ouster because he failed to adjust, failed to make halftime changes, failed to really nurture his relationships with players. Some key relationships had eroded last year, and confidence was lost in Bobby Slowick, and that was from key offensive players. Anyone you could name that was a key figure in the offense pretty much had become disappointed in Bobby, and you saw not just the pass protection issues, but really a lack of creativity, a lack of design, a lack of really some pizzazz and juice in the offense. And some of this was behind the scenes things that went on from a personality standpoint and just also from a creativity standpoint. So as the Texans hit the wall offensively, they decided it was time for a change. And that's what brings in the guy from behind door number 2, Nick Caley, a rookie play caller, but someone that is well-versed in a couple of offensive systems. Most recently, Sean McVay and his version of the West Coast offense that was really authored by Mike Shanahan and adapted with Kyle Shanahan, and now Sean McVay, his own imprints on this. And then a lot of that influence will be seen in terms of pre-snap motion, in terms of play calling aggressiveness, in terms of how to feed the wide receivers the football, feed the hot hand. That's something they did very well with the Rams. One of the hallmarks of their offense, it's a very quarterback-friendly offense, but a very wide receiver-friendly offense, Puka Nacua. Watch what Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams do this year, as long as they're both healthy, and they are right now, what they can do under Sean McVay. But the other influences, Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, a lot of the greats. He's got C.J. Stroud watching old Tom Brady tape from 2003, 2004. I used to cover a lot of those games when I was covering the Baltimore Ravens, and I can tell you what it was like, the way they changed their playbook every week to make it a game plan offense, not just running the same stuff all of the time. So a willingness to adapt, a willingness to change, and to adjust on the fly. And as he said several times since he's got this job, I think he's been a very clear communicator. I'm encouraged by what he's saying. And the players are liking the juice, liking the energy that they're seeing on the field. This is the guy with his hat turned around that's calling C.J. Stroud and texting him at 6 in the morning. He is all gas, no brakes. And I feel like this is the right guy to galvanize this offense, to give it a shot in the arm. And as C.J. Stroud says, rocket ship this thing. It all sounds good, but this is the summertime when I believe hope springs eternal. And there are reasons to be encouraged by the offense. There's also some reasons to wonder if some things might hold them back. But I'm liking the offense, what I'm hearing so far. So he's definitely hit the ground running and implementing his offense and imparting the knowledge that he gained from great coaches like Bill Belichick and Sean McVay. Yes, Sean McVay, great coach. Absolutely. If anybody's around Sean McVay, you can tell, you can feel it. You can see the way that he relates to players, and it's exciting. And it's a lot of it is not just the knowledge and what he knows, but it's the force of personality. It's just being a good dude. It's being someone that people gravitate toward. It's having that alpha personality and being a great communicator and building belief in people, the conviction. Intangibles matter in anything in life, but especially in football, to get that buy-in from people. So that's what I'm hearing so far about Nick Caley, is they're buying into the Caley way. So D'Amico, these are some comments from him. He says Nick has done an outstanding job, in his words, connecting with the staff, connecting with the players, making the offense, the Texans offense. He says very thorough process, very detailed. Energy on 100 every single day. Loves the positive energy, the smile, the joy. This guy's excited. He loves his job, and you can tell. And Kayley, at one point, was coaching Rob Gronkowski and Martellus Bennett, and they earned a couple of Super Bowl rings. He also coached a fullback in James Devlin, very good fullback, one of the more underrated fullbacks of the past decade. So at one point, And I've gone back. I've done kind of my homework, talking to Sean McVay at the owners' meetings, but also talking to his head coach when he was a student assistant at John Carroll University, which has launched so many careers, including Nick Caserio and Josh McDaniels and many others that have come through that program in the Cleveland area. It's just been a real launching pad for a lot of the NFL. So in terms of what he's been doing and trying to get things going, Jaden Higgins, he calls him awesome, likes the motivation, how excited he is, and just how things are going so far. So Kayley is, big thing is fixing the offensive line. You really can't tell until they start hitting how much better is the offensive line, but that's job one. And the relationship he has with Cole Popovich, they both worked for the Patriots, and they both learned a lot from the great Dante Scarnecchia, one of the most legendary offensive line coaches in NFL history. So you have that influence. And, of course, Bill Belichick, who's got more Super Bowl rings than you can fit on one hand. So these guys are winners, and that's where Kayley comes from. And he paid a lot of dues. I've talked to coaches that he worked with at Akron, at Eastern Illinois, like Brian Callahan, the Minnesota Golden Gophers offensive line coach and run game coordinator. So as I get to know Kayley more and more about him from those that know him best, overwhelmingly what I'm hearing is very deserving of this job, very prepared for the moment, and I feel like he's more ready for this than Bobby Slowick. I feel like Slowick maybe lacked total confidence, and I just have to go off of what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling. And I think with Kayley, I sense the personality and the ability to stand in front of the room. That's a big deal, to stand in front of the room and to teach and to command respect. And it's last season definitely respect had eroded for Slowick, and I was starting to get a lot of negative feedback about Slowick, and that's what led me to think it's going to be a vote of no confidence, and ultimately they did fire him. And Kayley, he beat out some good coaches for this job. Bill Lazor, a former offensive coordinator with the Bears and Bengals, and Gerard Johnson, great quarterbacks coach. So he was up against Brian Johnson from the Commanders, who's done a good job with Jaden Daniels. So a lot of coaches interviewed for this job. They even talked to Chip Kelly a little bit, and it didn't get very far. But yeah, I think what he'll try to do is establish the run, and that means Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb getting the football a lot, but also autonomy for C.J. Stroud, which is what C.J.'s been wanting this whole time. C.J. has been wanting to get the ability to change protections to audible, and for some reason it felt like Slowick was reluctant to do that, and Kayley's not. Kayley wants it to be C.J. Stroud's offense, and what I'm sensing is there's not a big ego with him. It's about the team, the team, the team. Who says that? First Bo Schembechler, and then Jack Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh. But a lot of people believe that. It is about the team. So going back to CJ, some comments. He says he buys into people. He doesn't really buy into necessarily a system, but it's about relationships. And he says that's what makes it rocket ship to the stars. These are CJ's words. So him as a person, he says he has the most juice he's ever seen in his life. That really resonates with me. So lots of energy, a lot of intensity, and a lot of fun. Let's think about that word for a moment. Fun. Fun, to me, that means creativity. It means cool plays. That means enjoying what you do. It means Texans football, not being hesitant, not being afraid necessarily to make a mistake. Aggressive, going after things. We saw deep balls in the mini camps. We saw Jaden Higgins going over the top. Nico Collins. We saw some underneath stuff that was pretty cool. We saw pre-snap motion from Christian Kirk especially. So we saw a lot of things that led me to believe that this offense could be on the right track. Obviously, they're going to be tested. They'll be tested in the first game against the Rams, trying to block Jared Verse and company, and going up against McVay, and McVay knowing so much about what he's already taught Kayley, what Kayley knows, doesn't know, tendencies. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting story, the chess match between the Rams, coaching staff, and Nick Caley. But it's the first game, and it's just a baseline. It's just the start. So I think this is something that can work, and I think it will work. But if you look at what happened last year, yeah, they just didn't make good halftime adjustments, and that's a big part of it. For the players, it's what you can teach them. It's not necessarily, I know a lot, and I have a lot of jargon. No, it's how can you help them do their jobs better. And another thing that a lot of people will tell you, it's not just about how much you know, it's how much do you care. And people want to know about the second part. First, caring, having a relationship with your players. And that's where I feel like Kayley really gets it. He understands that how important it is to build those strong relationships. So, one thing that D'Amico said, and this was during the spring practices, he said he's the same guy since he's interviewed him to having the meetings. He just sees constant energy and juice. But it's not just like he's out there running wild and yelling and smiling and patting guys on the back. No, he's got strategy. He's got savvy. He's someone that I feel like is smart and just loves this game. And it goes back to his days working his way up the ladder. He's someone that recruited Azeez Al-Shaair at Florida Atlantic. He relates to people. He has emotional intelligence. Al-Shaair was embarrassed about his family's living situation. They were all living in a hotel. They had been in and out of homelessness. They didn't own a home. They didn't even have their own apartment. They were all sharing a room, basically. And they're all piled on top of each other. And, this was life for Azeez and his family and his siblings. So it was tough. And he wanted to meet with Nick Caley and other recruiters away from the hotel, like at the school, that kind of thing, because he was embarrassed. And they built a relationship. They got to know each other. And this is obviously a defensive player. And eventually went on to become a great undrafted free agent for the 49ers, playing for D'Amico Ryans. I've never asked this question. I guarantee that D'Amico Ryans knows this. I went back and looked it up, that they had this connection between Al-Shaair and Nick Caley. It's obviously a defensive player, so it's not he's going to be coaching him, but it kind of shows me what Kayley is all about, that Kayley has that ability to connect. So that's important too, because ultimately it's about coaching, it's about strategy, it's about the chess match with the defense, but it's also about getting players to believe in you. So, again, we're talking a lot about intangibles. We're also talking about offensive systems. So with the West Coast offense, you see some concepts. I've watched that already. I've seen that in the practice sessions. But it's also about, having the ability to adapt and to morph into some older New England stuff. Brady ball, a lot of it is beating you from the pocket with your arm, with your feet, and with your mind. And so I've covered a lot of Brady games. I actually covered Brady in the Citrus Bowl, Michigan versus Arkansas. So I got to know Tom that week, interview him one-on-one. I've interviewed him at Super Bowls and things like that, but I got to know Tom a little bit that week, and I was impressed with him. I didn't know at all. I had no clue, obviously, what Tom Brady would become, because obviously the Patriots and the NFL didn't either, because they picked him in the 6th round. But yeah, it was cool to talk with Brady and watch him do his thing. And the quarterback actually for Arkansas was Clint Sterner, who also went on to play in the NFL, played for the Dallas Cowboys. So Sterner is now a well-respected local host, great guy, working at 610 Radio. And Brady came out on top. But yeah, I digress. I feel like being able to coach someone, work with guys like Brady, Matthew Stafford, Rob Gronkowski, Martellus Bennett, Tyler Higbee, shows he can deal with personalities. He can deal with vets. So having him and working in tandem with the Bill Lazors and the Cole Popoviches and the Gerard Johnsons and all the other position coaches like Danny Barrett, the assistant head coach and running backs coach, Ben McDaniels, the passing game coordinator, his close friend Jerry Schlapinski, senior offensive assistant that came with him from the Rams and is like his right-hand man in running this thing. All of that's going to help him. And D'Amico Ryans. So he's got a lot to backstop him as a younger offensive coordinator. I think he's ready for this. I think it's going to help. And I think with, having Joe Mixon, and we'll have a video this weekend on Mixon. I've got some updates for you on Mixon. So we'll tease there. And I'm going to talk to Joe Mixon's trainer that's working with him right now out in the Bay Area in California. And we're hearing some interesting things about the workouts they're doing together. But yeah, in terms of running this show, it's going to be different. Because when CJ Stroud breaks the huddle and they get to the line of scrimmage, he's going to look over the defense. He's going to be able to change things. He's going to be able to take the football and take it where he wants it to go. And that can mean change to a run, changing the protection, changing the schemes, throwing the football in a different direction, calling timeout, all of those things. And I feel like for the first 2 seasons, as successful as CJ was, he was an NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, as a Pro Bowl guy, I think they're only scratching the surface. There's more that can be done with CJ Stroud, and I think they can take this to a different level with Nick Caley. So yeah, I am enthusiastic about what Kayley can do to fix this offense. And obviously it needs to get better. You look at the offense last year, and so we'll talk a little bit about statistics. So they moved back. They were 22nd out of 32 teams in total offense. Not good. They were 19th in scoring per game. Not good again. And then in terms of the playoffs, they were second to last among the playoff squads in points per game. So they were basically a defensive team that was trying to run the ball and didn't run block very well. And all of it's going to come back to the offensive line, ultimately, if the offensive line is good enough. But it's also got to be about having a plan, about being decisive, and getting some things done. So in terms of doing that, and putting, CJ, as he says, he's going to put his swag on it. He wants to have fun with it. And he said that Nick Caley is all about him taking full ownership, running the show, and that's what he wanted. So he's going to get it. And I think CJ is more than capable of running the offense. He's a very smart guy. Look what he did at Ohio State. Look what he did as a rookie. Very mature young man, and I think he'll be ready for this. And they've improved the personnel. So we haven't talked a lot about that. We're talking about Kayley and a lot of intangibles. So when CJ Stroud, in terms of options, he can throw to a Pro Bowl wide receiver in Nico Collins, 6'4", 222, running a 4.4. He can throw underneath to Christian Kirk, who can scoot. He has Jalen Knoll, 4.39 speed, 23 bench reps, 42-inch vertical leap. He's got Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 214. It's like Twin Towers with him and Nico Collins. He's got hands, and he can sit down on routes, and he can block. He can do a lot of things. Dalton Schultz, got to be very motivated after how bad last year was. So you get a better Dalton, get a little more out of the tight end position. And with Cade Stover's looking pretty good, maybe things are better with that position. Joe Mixon will get healthy again. He's already on the path to that. He's made some improvements. Like I said, we'll get more into that. And then Nick Chubb, we'll see how much he has left. I thought he showed a little bit of burst, and I can tell that the knee and the foot are healthy. So if he can stay healthy, and if he's even 80% of what he used to be, they've got a nice complementary back. In terms of other wide receivers, obviously we're going to have competitions with John Mechie III, Braxton Berrios, Xavier Hutchinson. But I'm mostly thinking about the top guys of the depth chart, because that's what's going to make or break this team, barring an injury, is how those guys perform and how they mesh with the new offensive scheme. But, they're definitely putting a different stamp on things. And as CJ said, they talk about having blind trust. And he says he has a lot of trust in Nick Caley already. How he presents in the room, he says it's really cool to see. So that's the number one relationship. And CJ's relationship with Slowick, I believe it hit, kind of plateau. If anything, it was going down. It wasn't the same because CJ saw where the offense was headed. And it was frustrating for everybody. But you can't point all the fingers at Slowick. Obviously, players need to play better. The offensive line need to block better. And they need to probably make changes sooner. But they did what they did. They moved on. And now it is the Nick Caley show. And as he would say, he'd say right away, Aaron, it's not the Nick Caley show. It is the Texans show. That's the right answer. And you expect nothing less coming from John Carroll University and working for Bill Belichick. Do your job, right? That's what he's all about. So people are excited about Kayley, and Popovich, and we've talked plenty about Popovich and Strausser and moving on from Strausser, but, talking to CJ, and this is throughout the spring, and he says of Kayley, he comes from LA, he comes from New England, he will bring some of that swag over here, which is what he's used to. Taking control, a little more pre-snap, having the tools to put his guys in the best position. He said that's something that we didn't really work on these last 2 years. He said these principles he's learned has made him better. He's added a new element to his game and learned from what he did with New England and LA and helping, because those are two schemes he said he's used to, kind of some overlapping principles of what they did with the Ohio State Buckeyes, how New England does it especially. LA is a little bit like what they ran the last couple of years, but very interesting to see these New England elements that Nick Caley has in his back pocket. So there wasn't much mechanism when the defense was stacked against the Texans to adapt on the fly and check to plays with greater probability of success. And that ultimately led to Slowick's ouster, and despite his friendship with Coach D'Amico Ryans. So there's some familiar territory for Stroud based on this stuff they ran in the West Coast offensive concepts. But this New England stuff, this marks the new stuff for CJ. And there's some overlapping with the retention of the passing game coordinator in Ben McDaniels and receivers coach. Gerard Johnson, he's been working with Johnson since he's 16 years old, going back to the Elite 11 program. So his role will increase too. He's pivotal to what they're doing with this offense. Very important. Someone that, CJ looks up to, and just the person he is, the human being that he is. And, for this guy from Humboldt High School at Texas A&M, he's done a great job for the Texans. That's why he's had offensive coordinator interviews. That's why he's gotten raises. And so that is a lot of what's going on. But, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to have different offensive line, and like I said, we have had separate interviews and things that you probably guys saw, and I recommend you watch Titus Howard and what he had to say about them becoming nasty, about not taking any shit from anybody. And it's YouTube. Yes, I can cuss. I have a little fun with it. Sue me. And you can put your stamp on things. I'll put my stamp on it right now. So I cussed. Oh, not one of those terrible cuss words though. Anyway, as far as what's going to happen, I think that right now they believe in their offensive coordinator, and that belief is more than half the battle. Yeah, they're going to hit some times where they're going to wonder about things, but Kayley believes in CJ. As he says, he can spin it. He's got the it factor. So just a really natural thrower of the football, and I think that's going to help and make all the difference. But as kind of as we start to wrap up here, they are not going to, it's going to be what's best for the players, and they're not going to just pound a square peg into a round hole. I thought they did a little bit of that too much in recent years. Now it's going to be about how can you impact the offense, impact attacking the defense, and just running a better offense overall, a better operation. So looking at all of that, dropping things. And basically with the offense and putting the stamp on things and getting better, it's going to be about Nick Caley learning a lot as a first-time rookie offense coordinator. But I believe he's well prepared, and there's going to be some familiarity. And like Sean McVay said of Caley, he called him a special coach. He did a great job for him. He said he loves everything this guy's about. And that endorsement, it's what you'd expect to hear from McVay, but knowing McVay, and I know him for a while, straight shooter, and I don't think he would praise anybody that didn't deserve it. And he's one of the reasons why Nick Caley is prepared to be the Texans' offensive coordinator. And this is, like I said, it's time for optimism. There will be some tough moments. There will be some difficulties. There will be ups and downs. But I think this guy has got what it takes to be a good offensive coordinator. And I've talked to a lot of people, like I said. I've talked to Sean McVay. I've talked to guys that work with him in college. I've talked to people from New England. I've heard good things about him from the Rams, and even including people in the building not named Sean McVay. So the players so far, they have bought into what Nick Caley is all about, and it's going to be an exciting ride. It's going to be, we kind of feel like the defense, that's the benchmark. We expect the special teams to be good. Can the offense take the next step? With CJ Stroud having more ownership of the offense, Nick Caley calling these plays, building these game plans, and a new look receiving core and an overhauled offensive line, I know a lot of it's going to come back to the offensive line, and that's certainly right. That said, you got to have the right plays called too. It can't, and the right protections. It can't just be like, can they block guys? They can block guys, but let's see how well they can block guys. And if they can't block guys, how do you adjust to make up for any shortcomings? Because I can tell you, out of those 5, somebody's going to be the weak link. You're not going to have 5 all-stars out there, and they don't. They don't have 5 all-stars. So it's got to be a cohesive unit. And as much as that's Popovich, it's on Nick Caley too. But guys, until next time, appreciate your time. And yeah, this is my new little clicker. Kind of fun, having fun with the gadgets. I got a ring light. I'm trying to put more and more into the channel. And we'll have another live with, I promise, better success. I wasn't happy with how some things went and dropped the phone more than once. It'll get better. But guys, thanks for watching, liking, subscribing. Please join the channel if you're watching for the first time. Please hit that subscribe button and please watch and keep watching. And I promise to have more and more good content for you. Hopefully great content at some point. And appreciate the support from everybody. And I'm also on Aaron Wilson _ NFL for Twitter and X. Aaron Wilson 7128 for Instagram. I'm on television with KPRC's Randy McElvoy, and I write for www.click2houston.com, which is free of charge, so you can read me for free anytime, and all of my updates and news. Throw in a couple things here at the end, some things that I've reported on. As you guys know, the Damon Arnett deal is official, 1-year veteran minimum, and they move on from Tucker Addington. So right now, the long snapper is Austin Brinkman, the rookie from West Virginia. They got $110,000 guaranteed in his deal, so he is now the only long snapper, so by default, he is the replacement for John Weeks. Sounds like perhaps they've made up their mind. They've worked out other long snappers. We'll see. Do they sign anyone else, or is Brinkman the guy after the mini camps? And a little other housekeeping in the Jimmy Ward case, felony 3rd-degree domestic violence case involving an accusation from his baby's mother that he choked and threatened her and she feared for her life. That case had an original court date, next court date, initial appearance of July 16th. That has now been moved to August 13th by Judge Lisa Machalk, and she is the presiding judge in the Jimmy Ward case. And Jimmy is still working on getting the electronic monitoring off so he can train and do what he has to do for work. So he's innocent until proven guilty. He is free on $30,000 bond. And there's an emergency protective order granted to the accuser. So we'll see what happens in that case. And like I said, it's a serious legal matter. We take it seriously. And I would just say, I'm not going to prejudge the case. I've heard from his attorney, Steve Jackson. He predicted that he will be vindicated, that he asked for patience. He said, some of these guys can face some accusations because their platform, all that sort of stuff, and the profile they have. That's all fine and well and good, but ultimately will come down to the jury and the judge's opinion of the evidence that will be presented. So I'm not prejudging the case. I don't know. All I know is that Jimmy Ward's been a 2-time team captain. He's been exemplary in the community with philanthropy, with community events, and he's authored a children's book, and I think he's done a lot of good. But this is a serious accusation. It has to be investigated and looked into, and ultimately you're judged by a jury of your peers. So we'll see if it gets to that point. But right now, active case, August 13th, middle of training camp. Don't know if his foot was going to have him ready to go or not, but he's been running and training, and we'll see. But obviously football, not the most important thing right now, especially with Jimmy Ward. It's about a fight for his freedom, because this is a kind of crime that if you're convicted, you can face up to 10 years. I would doubt that he would go to jail as a first-time offender, no criminal record, but we'll see what happens. So, guys, sorry, I don't want to get too far off of the Nick Caley topic, but I'd like to throw in some nuggets sometimes at the end to just update you on things I don't think are necessarily, merit a whole new video. But I promise I'll have a Joe Mixon video for you guys soon. I'll schedule another live, and I'll be on television with Randy McElvoy on Saturday, along with Cecil Shorts and Ari Alexander. We've got a Texans special. Please tune in. Until next time, guys.